How do you like my new set? I decided to change things up of my own accord and was not coerced or bullied into doing so by any other person, place, or thing. I don't normally talk about Watchmen on this channel because, quite frankly, I don't feel like I should have to. It's often regarded as the greatest comic book ever written, and with good reason. It was released with a level of maturity and literary savvy that you just didn't see back in the day, or even now. But have you noticed that people don't really talk about Watchmen anymore? It's still very highly regarded, but people don't talk about it as often as they used to, unless it's talking about what DC and Warner Brothers is currently doing with the property. Like with the story's connections to the Rebirth Initiative, or as reported on last week, how Warner Brothers is planning on doing a faithful adaptation of the film, again, this time in animated form. But is now the right time? Do people care about Watchmen anymore? If you've never read Watchmen, written by Alan Moore with art by Dave Gibbons, what the hell are you doing watching me? The story takes place in an alt-history 1985, where Richard Nixon is still president. The basic premise of it is all around the mystery of who killed the comedian, a former masked hero, and how that might have a greater connection to a large conspiracy against former masked vigilantes. Now, discussing it any further would give a lot more of the plot and story away, but trust me when I say that reading Watchmen is unlike reading any other comic on the market. Seriously, pretty much since this book came out in 1985, it's been regarded as the Citizen Kane of comics, and rightfully so. It doesn't just tell a good mystery, it shows what would happen in a realistic world if a superpowered being actually existed. And it shows how people who are trying to fight crime outside of the law would affect the country on a social and political level. And it's still shocking and poignant to read on your first time, even today. I first read this book in high school almost 20 years after it originally came out, and it held up surprisingly well. But again, have you noticed in recent years, people don't really talk about it that much anymore? Let me explain what I mean. In 2009, we got the live-action Watchmen movie, which had been in development pretty much since the first issue came out. Now, for the most part, it wasn't bad. It wasn't great, and there was a lot of depth and complexity missing from the book, but Zack Snyder and co. were able to put in a lot of the important bits and were able to make a very unique superhero film. Yeah, I said something nice about Zack Snyder. He can direct, he just can't seem to direct anything with Superman in it. But that movie had an unintended side effect on the comic. According to a Bleeding Cool article from 2015, since the movie came out in 2009, sales of the graphic novel have dropped significantly. According to the article, in the first 7 months of 2015, DC only managed to sell less than 10,000 copies of Watchmen. Compare that to before the movie came out, where DC would sell around that same figure every single month. And they weren't just talking about Watchmen. Other books like The Dark Knight Returns, V for Vendetta, Batman Year One, other titles that had fairly accurate comic book adaptations were also seeing their sales drop. And yeah, it does kind of make sense. Why read a book when watching a movie is a lot faster and easier? Now, this is just a small part of a larger overall problem DC had with their place in the market at the time. They were losing significant ground to both Marvel and Image. Now, it may seem like DC shifting the blame towards outside forces, but if you think about it, this does kind of explain why they've been doing a lot of things with Watchmen over the past few years, like before Watchmen and the current Rebirth Initiative. Watchmen's stock had fallen in the public eye, so here's DC trying to raise it up again, trying to get people interested with new comics and integrating it into their main universe. Now, before Watchmen, didn't really do that. Aside from Darwin Cook's Minutemen, which got a lot of high praise, the books had very mixed reviews. They were plagued with delays, and sales would drop dramatically from issue to issue. Between the mixed reviews of the movie and the prequel comic, no wonder public interest in Watchmen was waning. What was once the most lauded book in all of comics was now just another title that older fans enjoyed. And it was no longer the cool comic that the mainstream media recommended. That honor went to books like The Walking Dead and Saga. It does look like things seem to be changing with Rebirth, though. People seem to be more receptive of Watchmen's inclusion in the Rebirth Initiative than they were with before Watchmen. It's probably because it's not as in-your-face as before Watchmen was. This is more subtle and more of a background thing, more of a mystery that just keeps leading us on and we want to see what the next step is. So it would make sense for Warner Brothers and DC to want to try another adaptation into a movie, this time animated and more faithful to the source material. whatever that means. It's just one more step in trying to get people to talk about Watchmen the way they did before Snyder's movie came out. But while people seem to be excited for the Rebirth mystery, are people still excited for Watchmen as a whole? Is an animated movie something that will really get people interested in the property again? I honestly don't know. Animated films unfortunately don't have the same prestige as live action films do, and getting somebody who doesn't read comics to read one is hard enough as it is. So to get somebody to read a comic and watch a cartoon at the same time is really a daunting task. And I know DC's animated films are popular, there is a lot of them I really like, but are they popular enough for the mainstream audience, or is this more of a fan thing? Then again, if they are able to keep the momentum of Rebirth as high as it is now, then maybe they have a shot at turning the ship around and making Watchmen interesting again. I mean, they could very easily mess it up. It's not simple to follow Alan Moore. Just ask anybody who's written Swamp Thing after him. But this is a very different DC than it was even 2 years ago. And hell, it's a very different Warner Brothers than it was 2 years ago. So maybe it is possible that they finally have what it takes to make Watchmen great again. Who knows? But what do you guys think about a Watchmen animated movie? Do you want this, or do you think it's time for us to move on from this book? And have you lost interest in Watchmen as a whole? Let me know down below or anywhere on the internet. We of course have new videos every Tuesday and Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern, Wulff Den Live, the live show where you can come hang out with us and watch us talk about all sorts of random crap. You can catch it on Thursday, the rerun version on Thursday, or on audio format on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Also, of course, don't forget to check out the backlog every Saturday where Bob and I go through a random game in our collection and talk about it regardless of whether or not we've played it. There have been some interesting ones recently, and still a lot more to come. And as always, like if you like, subscribe if you really like, share this video with a friend. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you next time.